Brad, thanks for coming back on. Very interesting connection we just had this past week. For those who recognize the name, obviously, you and I sat down over 2 years ago to talk through your experiences downrange. And it's been, as were just talking before we hit record, 250,000 people have probably listened to that discussion. And something came up just this past week that you wanted to address, and that's why we're here right now. So I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's tough when you make and do public things. You try and be as accurate and correct as you possibly can when you reference a situation or you're talking about something. But I felt like the thing that happened this past week with me related to the combat story, episode that we did a couple of years ago. Someone had just listened to it and it was talking, this person reached out and said, "Hey, I'm the person that you're referencing when you talk about, some jackass lieutenant running around in the streets picking up fast ropes." And I know this person, we've kept in touch, and he gave me his reasoning and logic for what he was doing and why he was doing it, which made complete sense. And basically, it was something that he got tasked with, thinking that there were going to be follow-on operations, thinking that, we may need these fast ropes to go rope into the city to another crash site. These are expended, they're off the helos and there's no way to get them back. And, I felt like it was something that I owed him a public apology and correction, because it was my perception of something that was happening in the middle of a very chaotic situation. And then I thought, to kind of further that thinking, I know that pretty much anybody that's been in a gunfight has experienced this to some degree or another. We see somebody doing something, we see an action, and it may not make sense. It may be that our memory is skewed of what actually happened. But I wanted to publicly say, I completely get what he was doing, why he was doing it, and, say, I'm sorry, for the perception or misperception that I had of this event, and the fact that it's been portrayed and talked about within the Ranger community, for 30 something years. I figure there are going to be some GWAT folks out there that are experiencing much the same thing. So I guess the point being, don't be judgmental. And if you have something that you're thinking about, or you've witnessed something that you have questions about in your mind, maybe it's something that you should address directly with the person, especially before making any sort of public statement about, what you witnessed.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. I think it says a lot that you pinged me right away and you're like, "Hey, we just got to get on and set the record straight," which, I think not a lot of people would do. Maybe for context for folks, and Brad, you catch me on this one, but to put people in that moment, you're talking about a chaotic moment. This is Black Hawk Down, basically.
Yeah.
You're in the aftermath of that. It's in the middle of it to some degree. And as you describe it in the interview the first time around, there's this lieutenant running around picking up fast ropes with, in your mind at the time, it was because he's accountable for these items,
Yeah.
which me, having been a jackass lieutenant, completely understand the need to recover accountable items. But obviously, in a gunfight, in that chaos, that's not something that you would necessarily think of. And I guess giving people that context and then what he reached out to you about and what he was saying he was doing, could you share that?
I think, part of my memory of that, and, I've done a lot of, not research into memory, but reading about, how we remember events, and especially stressful and chaotic events such as, traumatic gunfights or, other experiences that we might have, and how incorrect generally our memory is. And I remember it being probably one of the fiercest parts of the battle, and, engaging as many folks as I could engage. And in the middle of that, seeing a vehicle kind of being dismantled and a thermite grenade being placed on it, and, to destroy it in place. And, kind of in the middle of all that, someone running around with the fastropes. And so, I won't lie, that memory has been talked about with a number of folks that were there in that situation. And so what we all perceived was something, again, we had no context for the purpose, why he was doing what he was doing. But, looking back and then hearing his side of the events, it makes total sense. I know I have perceived things that, teammates and I have talked about after the fact. And even to the point of had someone call me on the anniversary of a significant date and thanked me for saving their life. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
No way.
I have zero idea what you're talking about. So, the situation got explained. And I think even this guy saw me acting, doing something that he perceived as, life-saving for him.
Wow.
I don't remember it that way at all. Zero recollection of that.
Jeez. That's something that I've experienced as well. When I was in Afghanistan flying, we had this one event where our ground unit we were covering got ambushed, and we just weren't able to. We just didn't see the ambush coming. We were providing convoy security from these Apaches, just didn't see it. These guys got hit. A young kid in the turret on one of the Humvees just took a direct hit. And I thought, especially in the aviation community, we never see the ground unit again. Like, we're there to support them, and the next day we're off supporting someone else. We aren't co-located with them. So I just thought for years, literally years, that this kid died and it was kind of on our hands. And it turns out he didn't die. I had misassociated the dates. He was badly injured, but another kid died 2 days later. And I had just, you're on missions every single day. Days run together. And for years, I kind of held myself responsible for this kid's death. And he didn't even die in that mission. So
Yeah.
the things we remember, are very much not how they actually happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this situation specifically, I felt horribly that I was public about something that was a perception that was incorrect. And for me, I'm going to rectify, correct, whatever you want to call it, the situation. And knowing that, at least 250,000 people have seen or heard this, I wanted to go out and publicly, correct that and right the wrong. I also wanted it to be, a teaching point for other folks that have been in similar situations. I think we've all perceived something and seen something that we, view as questionable, to include people that have seen me maybe do something questionable or weren't sure, why I did what I did. So I guess the learning lesson is don't be judgmental. And, if there is something like that or a rumor, it's best to address it, especially before, talking about it publicly. And, so that's all I felt like I could do. Reach out to you,
Yeah.
and say, hey, I made a mistake here. Can I please get on and correct this, and kind of go from there.
It's interesting. We'll end up releasing this, I think, probably next week. And the reason I say it is um, just a few days after we end up releasing what we're talking about right now, I've got a recording that I did 2 weeks ago with two guys, two SEALs. I interviewed them both individually, and then I brought them on together to talk about one fight that they were in together. They haven't seen each other for 5 years. Like they've been in touch, obviously, but like in person, we were sitting down talking about one specific instance, and both of them saw things not completely differently, but how one guy perceived where he was in formation and what the time was, and what the context, very different. And you could see them kind of like figuring out what the truth was together. And
Yeah.
this is from 12 years ago, a gunfight from 12 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about it in terms of 30 years later, I'm still learning things about, what happened during Black Hawk Down. Even though I was there, I only saw what I saw. It's been, I like talking about Mogadishu. I mean, it's number one, it's safe for me to talk about. But also too, it's kind of showing the folks that have experienced things in combat since then, or traumatic events since then, that like there are still things banging around, rattling around in people's brains 30 years later. And, those things don't go away. So, I wish that not rumor, but I wish that conversation had happened with him long ago, but not just for me, just collectively as a group. And it's almost kind of turned into, oh yeah, when he was running around doing this, and everybody kind of refers to that moment that way. So, number one, I'm educating people who saw the first combat story that I did, hey, that was incorrect. And then also too, folks that were there and my teammates and folks like that, educating them on what the real situation was.
Yeah. No, it's a stand-up move for sure. And I just wonder, like, while we have you, Brad, what have you been up to now? Like, what's going on with you these days
Not
and going
much.
forward? Please.
So yesterday kind of had this crazy moment. I got a call from, and I guess when this airs, I'll already know the outcome of this, but I got a call from America's Got Talent,
No.
producer from that show, and they want us to come on that show. So
Yes.
the cool thing about that is, you always kind of wonder, hey, is what I'm doing making a difference? I get a lot of personal connection with people that reach out and say, hey, I saw this, it really meant a lot to me. I heard this song, was in the gym, this song that you wrote and recorded, and it really connected with me. I get a lot of that, but you always kind of wonder how what you're doing, is it reaching the places that you wanted to reach? And so yesterday was kind of one of those moments where, okay, if I'm hitting the producers at America's Got Talent, they've got people out combing the internet, combing socials and things like that, looking for specific stuff. And then also to have some of the people that follow me on social media follow me, has been kind of validating. I didn't put myself out there to be like a famous vet or anything like that. The only reason that I ever even really put myself out there publicly was so that I didn't want people to assume that I was this, or I served here, or I wanted to be very public about it. Hey, I served in Delta Force from here to here. There's nothing secret about that. And, here are some photos that show me doing what I was doing. I didn't put myself out there to be a public figure. I don't really care about that. It was more to be an example to people that may be struggling to figure out a way how to give back in a healthy, positive, and creative way. And that's why I started what I started. So to know that it's hitting places like that is kind of validating that 6-7 years of hard work and effort that I've put in daily, to grow this thing and to make it be the thing that it is, is pretty awesome. The other part of that too is like seeing streams and music sales and things like that, and it just keeps trending up. And
Awesome.
anytime I do something like this, it'll go up.
Yep.
But then usually you hit a flat, you hit a plateau, and then it kind of trickles back off. People are bouncing on there. Let me hear what this music sounds like. And they like it or they don't like it. And it kind of plateaus, but it's getting to the point where it's just continually trending up. And that's awesome to see. So for people that don't know, if you download the music, if you buy the music, if you stream the music, we're taking music royalties and we're giving those to charitable organizations that we believe in that help the guys and gals from the community where we serve. That's the kind of bottom line. So anyway, that's been trending upwards. We just released an album this past summer, a new album, and that's done really well. I think we've all been surprised at how well it does when we look at the analytics every week, and you're like, man, holy smokes! Like, can't believe how many people actually like this stuff. It's it's awesome to see your artwork, and whatever your artwork is, get the attention that you're hoping that it gets. We're gonna do probably an EP and begin this spring in the studio and do some recording, probably just like a 3-song, 2-song EP. And I want to do something that's really like almost like Orion by Metallica, something that's just this long instrumental and speaks to some of the stuff that I really like. It doesn't have to fit in the silence and light mold. And then we'll probably do a single, or something like that on top of it. And then we've got a ton of shows lined up, for 2024. So we'll be out there, and people can check our website or check the social media accounts and see when and where all that stuff is. But mostly East Coast. That's kind of our ballpark.
How do you go, like what you just said, you want to do this longer instrumental, but since you don't have that yet, between now and when you record that, what is your approach and process to making something like that?
So I already have the framework of it, and it was a riff that I wrote a few years ago and was hoping to turn it into something. And a lot of times what happens is, like, a song may be great, you may love it, but in the context of an album, it's like this outlier that just doesn't fit. And that's what this song was. It took me, it's a very simple, the very first, kind of intro part of it. It's a very simple riff, but it's incredibly challenging to play. And it's like a backpedaling type of thing. And as soon as I could record it and like physically record it for about a minute, I'll record it and I'll play along to it. So just an iPhone recording. That's all you need to really capture your ideas. So I iPhone recorded it, and then I could start hearing layers that went on top of it. But to be honest, it wasn't something that fit with the last album. The last album was really kind of meant to be like a 91 to 95 kind of vibe to it. And I think we nailed that significantly, to the point that I was using equipment of that genre, to sound and create the tones and sounds that, from that era. So anyway, I've already got it. And I think from here, it's a matter of like going into the studio, laying that base framework, and then we're going to layer it up and add textures and heaviness and all kinds of other things. And it should be this really cool build. In terms of writing for album 3, it's pretty much done.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I can't work on new material until old material's finished. So we got done mixing and mastering the second album this past March. It was March or April, and then we started releasing singles in April, May, June. And I couldn't work on new material until then. It's just my brain can't, I'm still tweaking these other things. I'm so involved in the thing. So as soon as that was done, I guess March or April, new stuff just started flowing, and brought it to the guys. We started rehearsing it, basically got all the parts and pieces for 8 to 10 songs already done. So there's no reason to release another album. We just released one. So, thought, get in and do this EP thing, have some fun with that, and then go from there.
Nice. And just very selfishly, this question, I probably mentioned this when we did the recording 2 years ago, but I've got 3 sons. Youngest is a drummer. The older 2 are guitar players. They've got acoustic guitars. They've got electric guitars. They're playing. The only thing they've played outside our house is like their high school talent shows. So they're 16 and 14, the older 2. When would you encourage, and how would you encourage a kid of that age to start writing their own songs? Or is that something you don't even talk about as a father, and you just hope that they do this on their own and put no pressure on them?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, as a little kid, and I'm talking like a 3-year-old, I was creating my own stuff, and, be riding in the car with my family, and my dad would be screaming and yelling at some jackass in a Buick or, whatever. And I would start singing, making up rhymes, riddles, melodies, etc., about the guy in the Buick. So I think I've always been kind of creative that way. When I was playing music before the Army, I wrote a handful of things, and I just always kind of felt like it's not good enough. And, the example that I like to use today, Lane Staley, the singer from Alice in Chains, was gifted a guitar by Jerry Cantrell, the guitar player of Alice in Chains. And within a day or two, Lane wrote the song Angry Chair. And if you think about it, it's a very simple song. It doesn't need to be some complicated, complex thing. But he wrote that song, and that's one of their more popular, tunes. So for me personally, it was a hurdle of getting over, self-consciousness and, being worried about how people perceive the thing that I'm doing. And it really kind of took working with our first producer, Josh Goodwin, who's like multi-Grammy award-winning, amazing guy. I mean, Bieber's producer, laugh about that all you want, but Bad Bunny.
Wow.
This dude is the guy. And here I am playing tunes in front of this guy, and he's like grooving and getting into it. And I'm like, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. If this guy is grooving on it, okay, there's maybe something to it. Not to say every song is, amazing or whatever. I feel like the last album we hit out of the park. Like every tune on there is something that I love. In my mind, there's no filler or fluff on there. I think there's 11 songs. Every one of those tunes I absolutely love. So anyway, I don't care. Now it's almost like being a porn star, right? Like go in there and do this. And there's no shame, no anything else. It's kind of like that for me now, where I don't care if I like it and I think it's good, and my homies in the band think that it's good. Chances are it's probably good. So there's no self-consciousness anymore, which is a long way to answer the question of like, the more they can do and not be ashamed or, self-conscious about whatever it is they're creating, the earlier they can do that, the better. And however you go about doing that or teaching them, that, probably the better.
Did the Army break that self-consciousness down for you?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know. I don't feel like it was an Army thing, because music and that part for me is so separated from what I did prior. And I had a lot of confidence in what I did prior. There wasn't anything that you could throw at me that I would be like, can I make it? Can I, am I going to get through this? I never really felt that way. So this was kind of like maybe getting that musical or artistic level of confidence up on par with, the other confidence that I have in life. Maybe that's a good example.
Interesting. And then lastly, like any advice you would give to kids that age who just love getting their hands on a guitar to keep that kind of passion going?
Just play. I get people send me these 9-year-old virtuoso, guitar videos and like just crazy stuff. And they're like, he's only 9. Like, okay, cool. Play me a song. So I've never been, in terms of a player or a fan, I've never been a fan of, the lightning fast. To me, that's just repetition. It's almost like, I don't know, quantity versus quality.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's lead playing, whether it's song, I just have always dug stuff more the Alice in Chains kind of vibe, where, they can play faster stuff, but it's heavy and it's dark and you can feel the music. Pink Floyd, David Gilmour has always been a great example of a feely kind of player. You can feel the notes that he's playing, man. It's got emotion to it. And I don't know. So in my mind, learning on your own is probably one of the best things. It won't make you the most efficient player, but that's really kind of what creates your style. The way I transition from this to that is something unique to me. Mm-hmm. It's not something that was taught to me, and it's probably wrong. and probably a better way to do it. But that's a way of developing your style. So kind of goes in line with the other question you asked. I think having them do their own thing, getting them to write their own stuff is by far a better option than watching YouTube videos to figure out how to play this thing that somebody else plays.
Yeah.
Just figure it out. YouTube is like, the biggest helper now. And you see these kids that can learn how to play something in a couple of months. It took me years, of dropping the needle on Seek and Destroy on an album,
Play it back.
trying to get to that spot. And these kids can do it like that today. So, that's
cool.
Probably a good and bad thing.
All right. For the, I don't know if you're allowed to mention this, but the America's Got Talent, like, would that be this coming season potentially?
Yeah, season 19 is what so by the time this airs, should have the answer on whether or not we're going to be involved with that. And I don't look at any of this stuff and think, oh man, that could be me. I'm so excited. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The fact that I reached, those people,
Exactly.
and to me speaks volumes about what I'm doing, and that's like as proud as I could be of it. So if it works out, cool. If it doesn't, cool. I look at it and I think we've got a great story, as compared to probably other bands that they're going to showcase and feature. The person that I talked to yesterday is not the selector, the executive producers are. So we have some video content that we owe them this coming week. And then she'll take that. If it passes muster, she'll take that to the executive producers and then they'll make a decision. So by the time this airs, I should know one way or the other. Just interesting.
So when people listen to this, they can go check out probably your socials, Silence and Light, and see the verdict, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And even then, it might be one of those things where like, no, don't talk about it.
Yeah, you might not be able to say anything. That's true. Okay, so
now I haven't done shit.
You got to wait. All right. Well, Brad, thanks so much for the time, and it was just good. I think a lot of guys may not have done what you did in reaching out very quickly and trying to set the record straight. I'm not surprised that you do it, but I think it's worth noting that people shouldn't be afraid to do that either. It's a good learning point, as you mentioned.
I greatly appreciate the platform and your willingness to help out with this too, because like I said, as soon as I read the message that he sent, I was like, oh man, like I never thought of that this way. And it also is like, I think I've done a really good job of not telling other people's stories. And that was probably one example where I shared something that it wasn't my experience. It was just something I witnessed. So, a great example, what not to do. And, you want to speak about first person and I did this, I did that, cool. But anyway, I'm glad that I had the chance to correct it, and I appreciate you giving me the platform to do so. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck, man. We'll be watching. We'll be watching what happens. We're big AGT fans, so I'm sure you'll have some people rooting for you, at least over here.
I don't think I've seen it since like the original season or two. So
we try to use it to cultivate this musical spirit in the kids. Like, hey, that you could like, this is what people do. They write their own stuff. They get out there and they enjoy it. We don't watch every season, but I will be keeping a close eye on this one.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, thanks again, Ryan.